Hello, this is Jim Lane, the mayor of Scottsdale, and I'm honored to be here today and to welcome the mayor of Cairns, Queensland, Australia, Robert Manning. He's also a notable Australian as well as a Cairns citizen. He was a Cairns Citizen of the Year in 2002, and the honor, no, it's the Medal of the Order of Australia. Now, that sounds really very nice and very interesting. I'd like for you to tell me a little bit about that. But that in 2004, to have been given that honor, the Medal of the Honor, Medal of the Order of Australia. Congratulations, belatedly, I might say, but it's my pleasure to have you here. And Mayor Manning just recently was reelected for his third term as mayor of Cairns. And so we welcome him here today to be with us. Thank you very much for being here with me.
Thank you very much, Jim, and it's wonderful to be with you. And you are the only sister city mayor that we've shared this pleasure. We do keep a good contact with the others, but you're the only one that I've had the pleasure of doing this with. And I remember our last chat was a very warm, a very cordial, very easy one. And we've had a little bit of trouble connecting this morning, but we're there, Jim.
Hey, with challenges, there are opportunities. So.
Well, yes, I sometimes have a lot of trouble working that one out.
Well,
don't come along.
Well, I'm glad we were able to make it successful.
Yes.
Well, you know, I understand Australia and Cairns in particular has not seen quite the same impact as maybe here in the United States that we've seen with COVID-19. And if you don't mind, and I realize this is sort of the topic of the day, but it's an interesting part for us because we're just now moving back into opening up our economy and our overall city. And so there's struggles on both ends, going in and then coming back out, actually with some of the fear that has been generated and has changed an awful lot of people's perspective about things. Can you tell me, it sounds to me from the national news that you've had a fair amount of success in dealing with it.
Jim, we've had, I think the results have been good. Whether that was because of our management or whether it was because we didn't get hit as hard, but certainly our Prime Minister, and he was only re-elected not so long ago, and he went to the election expecting to lose the poll, or he didn't expect to lose, but the pollsters were saying he wouldn't make it, he'd get beaten. And really, I think he passed the opposition leader the day before the polls, the day before the election. And it was a surprise win. But looking back on that, Jim, I think how lucky we were at that time, because he really has done a great job of leading the country. People have had confidence in him. He's been decisive. He's been very active. He formed something that we've never had before, a national cabinet where the premiers of each of the states, regardless of their political persuasion, would join him in weekly national cabinet meetings. And they made, the federal government gave good leadership. The state government retained the responsibilities that they would have. Nothing was taken from them because they're always touchy about whose turf you're on. But the whole thing worked well, Jim. And when we look at the numbers, the number of deaths we've had, our state, Queensland, I think it's 9 overall. And the people have warmed to that leadership and the decisiveness. People have certainly warmed to the outcome. Last night we had our first game of National Rugby League in Brisbane, and a stadium that would have had 50,000 people in it normally had 100 people in it last night. Nevertheless, the game was televised to us and would have been watched very much all over the country. first sporting game for ages, Jim. But look, the success has been there. I think we're encouraged by that. We're now starting to slowly. Um, Queensland, the slowest of the states to come out of this, and I wish we would push that along a little bit more and follow the lead of the other states. Um, we're keen. We've had no aircraft flying into Cairns. Our tourism industry is pretty much 100% shut down, Jim, and that's hurting us badly.
Mayor, how long were you shut down?
Well, we've 67 days, I think it is. It's been a while,
Two full
but
months, anyway. Yeah.
yeah, it was. But it does seem to have been effective, Jim.
Well, that's it's interesting because we were in total we really were shut down about 8 weeks,
Mm,
and
mm,
a little well probably about 2 months. So it's
mm,
on a closer order with that too. Now that I think about it, but nevertheless, opening up is a bit of a struggle between the folks who have been fairly traumatized. And don't get me wrong, this is a serious situation, but I mean mentally and even being shut in and such, that it's been much more difficult to try to ease people back in to doing anything. And we're trying to do it slowly and carefully. I think much in the same way as your administration there is trying to do. And of course, it's led out of the president's office here,
mm,
which there's probably differences of opinion certainly with regard to it, his leadership and everything. But the state of Arizona has followed him very closely, and we manage it on a state level, and then of course down to the city and counties, as
mm,
far as how we uh, enlist the cooperation, because these are difficult situations for people to deal with, and you want to keep them with you and understanding the mission. And sometimes with all the changes, it becomes a little scary for people.
mm, mm.
But it sounds like you
Yep.
put confidence in your prime minister.
I yes. Look, I um, I I I I I had picked that the opposition was going to roll him at the last elections, and it seemed like the time was up for the Conservatives. But his comeback at the last minute was brilliant. He was a guy who put a lot into it. He puts a lot into what he does. He's always energetic. He's very he's very good at connecting with the people. But I'm pleased that he was there. In hindsight, very pleased that he was there to guide us through this, because it's not always easy for these guys, and they all don't stand up to pressure in the same way. Sometimes people crack, or they start to come apart a little bit. But Morrison's been pretty good, I think, all round. He'd get a very good pass block.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and certainly with the success that you've seen, I mean that is certainly a very big positive in his column, to be able to carry forward, and the
Sure.
population being united behind it in the most part, as you described, is a big plus. But we had consequences, of course. We did here too. It is economically, and particularly for small businesses in the retail and the restaurants and those kinds of amenities that are here in a tourist town. And realizing that Cairns is also the entry point or the gateway to the Great Barrier Reef, and you've got a tourist economy much like ours, I would say, on a similar vein. We don't have an ocean or anything beside us, but nevertheless, you give us a ditch with water in it, we call it oceanfront property. But and it works real well for us. But in any case, we have other attractions, I might say. But bottom line is that a lot of businesses were literally crushed, and there was some programs that the national level and on the state level that were instituted to try to rescue those companies. Sometimes people wanted to call it stimulus, but really what it was is a matter of making sure that people survived, for another day, even with their losses. But yeah, I've read a little bit about the impact economically for yourselves, but how did you see it in your economy there locally, given tourism, the same kind of circumstance?
Jim, we still have our border with New South Wales closed. Now this is perhaps the most contentious point we've seen throughout all of this, and people in the tourism industry, especially, are saying open the border, open it. During this, with the coming school holidays, the southeast Queensland, the southeast corner, the metropolitan area of Brisbane, the Gold Coast, and the Sunshine Coast, that's most of our population, and they will be able to, because of that large population, there will be a fair amount of economic activity. We won't get access to that unless uh, we we an imaginary border or separation is torn down, because we can only travel at the moment 150 kilometres from our homes as the crow flies. So that will take metropolitan people won't get into the country at all. We're close to 2,000 kilometres away from Brisbane. We don't have planes flying at the moment, so our school holiday period will be very quiet. Down in the metropolitan corner, there'll be a fair bit of activity with people moving around. Now, admittedly, it will only be internal, but they won't be getting people from New South Wales, so that's a down. But they will be able to travel within that metropolitan area, and certainly more than the 150 k's. We are referring to bubbles that are forming. We'll accept people from New Zealand. They're within a bubble that we say is safe, and likewise, I'm sure we will be able to, or hopeful that we will be able to have travel between us and Townsville, us and Mackay, and the other, regional centres in Queensland. There's about 6 of us, all sit around the 150 to 170,000 mark. So we're, reasonable sized regional centres, and we want to be able to move people between those. And Jim, there are no active cases in Queensland at the moment, so we think maybe our premier's been a bit cautious, a bit too cautious.
Yeah.
There comes a point when you've got to determine you're going to run in a different direction, and we think it's probably time for us to be thinking more seriously about that. That's what the Fed's doing. That's what the other states are doing. So I think we got an election coming up in October, so it may have something to do with that. Somehow they've worked out that there's some advantage to go this way, and maybe to appear to be being strong, and it's more health than it is about the economy. And but you've got to get a balance there.
Robert, if I may,
Well, please.
but it's interesting, the parallels between our communities, even as you're talking about the politics, the election time. I mean, we're only a month off as far as that's concerned, in the considerations we have and that you have. And unfortunately, when that plays a role, it sometimes creates sometimes bad decisions, really. I mean, and it may be being too cautious is one of those things, and particularly given your circumstances, it sounds to me your economy is pretty much localized to those centers of population that you just mentioned. You may work between each other, but are you seeing any real consequences? I mean, how difficult is this becoming for your economy?
Well, Jim, our economy is our major industry is tourism, and tourism for Australia is an incredibly important component of its economy. When I was a young lad, I used to wonder why people would come to Australia. There's nothing to see. There's no really big cities. Why would people want to come here? And in the area I live in, the Great Barrier Reef, we used to go there every weekend and think, well, why, as kids, we were quite happy when Dad didn't take us out in the boat. We could have a weekend playing with our mates, I mean, we've been going there, Dad, for the last 50 weekends. Can't we do something else? And likewise with the rainforest. But of course, now the whole world wants to come here and see those, and wants to engage with our Indigenous communities. And we realise now the attractiveness, the strength of these things as something that the rest of the world wants to see.
Yeah.
And the rest of the world, for us, only needs to be a couple of percent, a year, and it's a huge industry. So but Jim, building a tourism industry is one thing. Maintaining it through thick and thin is another thing. And I think the decision made by our government was throw the rubbish out, get it outside quickly. But you need to be careful in terms of how you try and reinstate things. It just doesn't happen that easily. And when we're trying to reinstate, we've got to be mindful that we may not even understand what other countries are going through at the moment. I mean, I think South America and some parts of Europe and have gone through tougher times than others. Now, whether that was down to slow reactions or maybe not getting the timing right, but look, Jim, I'm firmly convinced we're on the way out of this, and I know I feel a lot better about where we are now than where we were last week or the week before.
Yeah.
And there were times when you're thinking, God, why did this have to happen to us? But now I'm looking forward to coming out of it. I'm looking forward to making decisions that work, that give good outcomes, where you talk to people in the street and they got their chin up, and we all like a stoush every now and again, but we also don't want it to be too serious.
Yeah. A lot of people in the audience that will see this don't know that Cairns has been a sister city with Scottsdale since 1987. And it's been interesting and a great relationship. We've had student exchanges and a number of other things. We've Skyped occasionally, as we were talking about before. And, the interesting thing about it, as sort of compatible and as really as similar as we may have an exchange of even a bit of a culture. We're not Australian and you're not Americans necessarily, but there's a good bit to be shared all the way around. But it's been an interesting relationship, and I've come to understand that our Sister Cities organization getting together with, who's the young lady who came out?
Sim Hayward?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I understand she was reappointed to the position as well,
yes.
Head that up. But in 2 years, it looks like we're looking to try to put together a visit out to Cairns from Scottsdale here. So who knows? We may yet meet in person.
Yeah, you pointed out earlier that we won our election in March. We have a 2-week pre-polling period, and then the last polling day at the end of that is where everybody else comes in and votes. So if you want to vote early, you can. And I don't know why you would do that, because the pre-polling always takes a long time, whereas polling on polling day takes a few minutes. I don't know why people do this, Jim. It's one of the things I just don't understand. But midway through our pre-poll period, we had to walk away from the polling booths because the government started to react to the virus. And so the polling, the election, that election period and the final polling day were very easy for us. We couldn't go there. We couldn't hand out how to vote cards. We couldn't talk to people. We had to stay at a distance. So the poll was a very easy one for us, and the result was a good one. So it worked, Jim.
Yeah.
But I'm entering now my 3rd term, as you said, and this is a 4-year term. So I have never been to a sister city in my time in council. And there's a lot about Scottsdale when I read about it. I think we've got a fair bit in common, except we're Great Barrier Reef and the wet tropics, and
Yeah.
we've got large indigenous population north of us living in communities that are all governed the same way that we are, and we have a great relationship with them. We have a wonderful cultural exchanges with them, particularly their artwork, which we just love. And but the more I see and read about Scottsdale, and even though we're like chalk and cheese, um, but the more I realise just how similar we are. Jim, I had a great association with American people many years ago, um, under different circumstances, and I my my appreciation, my understanding, my desire to know more about the United States of America and its people and how it works. I remember as a kid at high school, I was besotted by the Kennedy family and these young leaders, and I just thought they were. And I was about 19 or so then. I just thought these guys could run the world,
You
and
know,
and my how things don't work out. I mean, no one would ever thought what happened there could ever have happened.
yeah.
So we live in a
Yeah,
free
absolutely.
world.
And
Mm,
incidentally, I did see that you were a Vietnam vet.
mm, mm,
And I
mm.
don't know if that's sort of the connection that you might have drawn with that, but nevertheless, uh, a difficult period in time, obviously all the way around, but certainly from an ally in that operation as a country, certainly thanks for your service there and what you've done.
They were good. They were good guys. They really were. I enjoyed their company, and we got to like each other a
Yeah.
lot. So that was an unusual experience, but one that it all sticks with you. Mm.
You know, I got to tell you, Robert, it's been great talking to you. Do you, before I sign off, sell me a little bit on why Scottsdalians might want to be coming to your area of Australia or Australia in general.
Oh,
I don't mean to put you on the spot on that, but at the same
no,
time,
no, no. Jim, I lived 8 years in Western Queensland,
uh-huh.
in country not unlike yours, sheep and cattle, but and maybe you might be a bit drier, but where the rainfall, I mean, they've been in drought now for a number of years. But when my wife and I went out there, we fell in love with the place. We fell in love with the people, particularly the people. And in anything, the bottom line is the people. What are they like? And if they're good people, and if they're friendly and welcoming, and they've got values, and you find that, that's you can live anywhere really.
Yeah.
And we loved our time out in West Queensland, but while we were there, tourism started to, people went out there, especially the grey nomads would travel in their caravans and tow them thousands of kilometres, out into these western areas. But I was talking to a fellow who headed up the tourism industry in Queensland at the time, and I said, Frank, what have we got to do to get ourselves more into tourism? I said, do we tart the town up a bit? Do we get some Ferris wheels out here or something? What do we do, Frank? And he said, Bob, do nothing. Just stay exactly the way you are. And that's what people really want to see. That's what they want to experience. And that's what will bring them back. And I think that's the same for all of us in tourism. People want a, a genuine experience, an authentic
Yeah.
experience. You want to experience, you guys would come here, you want to see and experience Australia and Australians, and our wonderful nature, which is different to anything else in the world, and kangaroos, koala bears, and huge crocodiles, and likewise going to your place. People want to experience that.
All marsupials.
Yeah, yes, yes, yes. Although, Jim, with the fires we had leading into the coronavirus, the fire season we had this year was
Oh,
terrible,
I
just
heard.
terrible.
And I'm
Yeah.
really sorry to hear, obviously, the devastation and all of that. That
You know
is
what?
really tough.
You go to those areas now, and there's trees growing, and everything's recovering quickly, and the land has a wonderful ability to commend itself. Yeah,
Return life to it. Yeah,
yeah, yes.
absolutely. You know, you mentioned about tourism and that little thought about Australia and tourism and what it means, and I did notice in the reading that the medal of the Order of Australia
Mm.
in 2004 had something to do with tourism and your promotion and your development of tourism. I believe there in Cairns.
Mm. Jim, I was born in Cairns, and my wife was born here, but then our lives took us to other places, and we've spent quite a number of years in other towns, including 3 years in Cyprus, working there. So, we've got around a bit, but we keep coming back to Cairns because we love the area. But back in the 1980s, when came back to Cairns to take over what was called the Port Authority, and which ran the seaport and the airport, um, I very quickly got involved in the tourism industry, or an interest in the tourism industry, particularly because the airport was a big mover of people for us. And it was the airport and airlines who enabled us to become so big on a pro rata scale um, in the tourism industry. So I always took an interest in it, and I have a great interest in it now. And in fact, we're trying to lead Australia and local governments in Australia into adopting or getting their state governments to allow them to adopt a tourism levy, which can be levied by the councils, and the receipts from that levy go to the tourism industry, not to the council, but that goes to our regional tourism organisation, which gives them the ability then, Jim, to sufficiently be able to run their campaigns of marketing and promotion. So the RTOs, the regional tourism organisations, will have far more money to spend in marketing and promotions, which is how it should be, and not be subjected to the whims and the political thinking of councils, for that matter, and central governments, like our state governments or our federal governments. So
Well, you know,
we want to pull this one off, Jim, and yeah.
well, it's a great effort and endeavor, and it's actually something that we have incorporated into our tax structure too. It's a tourism tax, and it's used specifically for destination marketing and
Yes,
for
yes,
actually for tourism type of infrastructure that the city would
yeah.
enhance those public areas and even sometimes some public venues. But nevertheless, it's a successful way to go. I wish you luck with that. I think we like to say tourism paying for tourism.
Well, Jim, the Gold Coast runs on a tax of its people. This way, though, it's a user pays system where you take from the tourism people, and our levies proposed at 2.5% of their room rate, um, but not to be used for infrastructure, and all of the money to come from we collect it, and we then pass it all on to the
Yeah.
regional tourism organisation. Yeah.
Well, the
So
destination marketing goes out to a separate firm that does exactly that, has membership in
yep,
that
yeah,
industry. But I think it's
yeah.
on a similar line. So I think it's
Jim,
a
it's all over the world.
yeah.
There's slightly different formats of it, but it's something that's done all over the world, and I just have a lot of trouble trying to understand why Australia and New Zealand haven't adopted this more.
Uh, well, that's an interesting. I don't know what the relationship is between New Zealand and Australia. I almost see them in the same kind of view or perspective. But
If they called their prime minister a premier, we would welcome them in as the next state. I wouldn't want to say that in New Zealand, though. You'd get done over.
Well, Robert, it has really been a pleasure talking with you, and it's nice to see you again, as I said, and I hope to be able to visit your fine city sometime in the not too
Jim,
distant future myself.
we would love that, and I'd like to set myself a target of perhaps um, we have a couple of uh, we have one sister city in Japan again, uh, more your size, a little bit bigger than us, but and then one which is really a fishing village, and I would like to get up there sometime over the next few years, and maybe on the way back home, come via your place, Jim.
Well,
I've never been to a sister city, as I said before. We
yeah,
send delegations, we send groups, we have a lot of exchanges with kids, and I think they're the best ones. They're wonderful and
yeah,
cultural
it is,
exchange.
and well, it's an exchange of culture. It's a
Yeah.
people-to-people kind of thing, and that is wonderful. You know, I should share with you that I'm at the end of my third term, and we're term limited to 3 4-year terms.
Oh,
And
yep,
so
yep.
if I get out that direction, I may be coming as just a civilian kind of guy, but I'll still look you up. But the other is that, and I'd probably be coming with sister cities if they do that. But if you come this direction, irrespective of who's in my office at that time, let's make a point of getting together.
Mm, mm. Love to, Jim, and I do hope that chance happens. I mean, we didn't expect this. Our term now has been recoloured, um, reshaped by by the virus, and having now we paid out a lot of money that we we got to get our budget back into shape, and we've set ourselves a period of 3 years to achieve that. But we've still got major building programs going on, Jim, and but so maybe our our task is to deliver the city back to a good, solid, stable financial footing,
Yeah.
and forget about some of our dreams, things you'd like to do. But,
Well, I certainly wish you the very best of luck in all of that, and good health and
likewise,
prosperity.
to you, Jim. Likewise to you, fellows. And
So
we
you
look forward to.
take care and stay healthy, Robert.